Hello everyone, this is Neil Turbin with the Metal Voice, and here we are with an amazing person and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame drummer and drummer for Lynyrd Skynyrd and Artimus Pyle band, Mr. Artimus Pyle himself, and it's a pleasure to be here with you, Artimus. Really,
hey Neil.
Really wonderful to
All
see
right,
you
man.
again.
Good to see you again.
And you know, here we are at the Performing Arts Center here in Palos Verdes.
Beautiful place.
Yeah, and we're going to go check out Artimus's band. And just wanted to have a chance to talk to Artimus because he's got some amazing stories and amazing things to share with us. And just wanted to ask you, what inspired you to get back into the music after, you know, everything that happened? I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of emotions, but I know that you went to Jerusalem and to Israel. I don't know if that was shortly after, but I guess what goes through a person's mind when you go through something like that and get back into the music business after, you know, losing your dear friends and, you know, your band, I mean, your livelihood, everything. I mean.
Yeah, so I'll just tackle a couple of your questions in there. First of all, you know, I just jammed with Dave Grohl a few weeks ago. And Dave and I were talking, and he said that both of our singers, Ronnie Van Zant, you know, and his singer with Nirvana, Kurt Cobain, he said both of our singers were tragically taken from us. And he said both of us are Rock and Roll Hall of Fame drummers. For me, it's because of Ronnie Van Zant. And he said both of us, music brought us back to life. And that is so true for me. Music, you know, after the plane crash, there was a 10-year void there, kind of a foggy 10 years where we were all just, you know, kind of directionless. And we did eventually come together for the tribute tour in 1987. But losing a guy like Steve Gaines and his sister Cassie, and even our road manager, Dean Cleopatra, and of course the late great Ronnie Van Zant, losing that many people that were so significant, you know, to the music, was a devastating blow. And, you know, you were talking about, you heard it on the news and you saw it in the media and everything. And that is the same, I mean, that's a loss. That's kind of one of those the day the music died things with Ronnie. But think about it, in August, we lost Elvis Presley. So Elvis in August, and then Ronnie in October, the music industry took, you know, a really big hit in those months. And, you know, I've been calling Rolling Stone every year and say, you know, I say, hi, this is Artimus Pyle. I'm the drummer of Lynyrd Skynyrd. I think Ronnie Van Zant should be on the cover of Rolling Stone. He deserves it. Not me, not the band, but Ronnie, you know, and they always go, okay, Artimus, well, we'll call you back. Well, of course, they never call me back. But I'm not going to give up. I'm going to call every year until they put Ronnie on the cover of Rolling Stone. He deserves it. All these other idiots get on the cover of Rolling Stone, and Ronnie Van Zant deserves it because he wrote songs that are part of the fabric of America. And all over the world, people love, I mean, I hear the stories after our shows when I play with this incredible band that we put together. I couldn't do this by myself. And the group of guys that we have together for APB, they're all professional businessmen. They have beautiful wives and children and homes and their businesses. They're successful businessmen. And they, you know, I'm 70 and they're all like 55. And they grew up with the music and they play it with honor, integrity, and accuracy. And there's no clown act going on stage. It's all about Ronnie's music and Ronnie's words. And I'm very lucky to be included. When my wife came in the room years ago and said, you're being inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, tears came to my eyes. And all I could think of was that the first words out of my mouth were, thank you, Ronnie. Because being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is something I never dreamt of. I don't go around my life, going, yeah, I'm going to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame someday. That's just something you don't think about. I didn't. And Ronnie, because of Ronnie, I'm in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I'm in with very good company. So that meeting with Dave Grohl was for the Christmas Jam there in Asheville, North Carolina. And Warren Haynes, every year, it was the 30th year, and a lot of the guys in my band were good friends with Warren Haynes. And they've been to all the Christmas jams, and it's to raise money for the Habitat of Humanity, building houses for people that need houses. So Dave and Warren called me up, and the last song that sold out crowds heard for the Christmas Jam, and we had 2 feet of snow coming that night. The last song they heard was Simple Man. And the crowd, it was a sold out crowd. There were smiles and happiness and tears all throughout the crowd. And I looked over at Dave Grohl, and he actually did a Nirvana song. And I don't know if it's the first time he's done a Nirvana song since, all that happened. But, and I don't think the drummer from Nirvana and the Foo Fighters even knows who I am. But Dave knew who I was, and he said, man, I've been a big fan. I'm getting that from Dave Grohl. Well, again, thank you, Ronnie, because, a guy like Dave Grohl, one of the greatest musicians on the planet, can play anything, is funny. He's a beautiful person, Dave is, And when I looked over and they were doing All Apologies, and the crowd was singing it back, I saw tears streaming down his out of his eyes. And then, then we did Simple Man, and that was the perfect, ending to the Christmas Jam. And so I get to play with this great band, go all over the country playing music. And a guy asked me the other day in an interview, do you ever get sick of playing these songs? Absolutely not. Every time I play these songs, it's fresh to me. And I put everything I've got into them, because you can't play Lynyrd Skynyrd songs without giving it your all. Each song is different. As a drummer, there's no 2 songs the same. There's stops and starts and dynamics and little nuances in the songs that were written in. And it's incredible to play those songs every night and see how happy it makes a lot of people. Some people, I'm sure out there, they're indifferent to Lynyrd Skynyrd because, it's like they look at me as maybe over the hill or something like that. I don't think that way. I don't even care that I'm 70 years old. As long as I can play these Skynyrd songs properly, I'm going to do it. And I want to be the 100-year-old drummer, And at 100, after we're through with our last tour, I'm going to start stand-up comedy. I'm going to go to the comedy store in Los Angeles, go in at 4 o'clock in the morning and do my stand-up. Because I was in the Marines, right? And they called me Gomer Pyle, because Gomer, my last name is Pyle. So they ragged me. I had to go golly and Shazam and all that stuff that Gomer said I had to say. And saying that, surprise, surprise, surprise. Hey, Sarge, those 4 things I had to say loud and country, or they make me do it again. So I figured, I'm in an E Company in Camp Pendleton. I went through San Diego. I'm a Hollywood Marine. My dad went through PI, Parris Island. And so at Camp Pendleton, when they'd see my name tag, Pyle, they'd yell, and I'd have to come up and perform, do the Shazam, golly, all that stuff that Gomer did. So if I brought a belly laugh to some guy that went to Vietnam and gave his life for this country, and he had a laugh at my expense, no problem. And that happened. Because my company, E Company, most of those guys went to Vietnam. And I went to Memphis, Tennessee, and learned how to work on aviation electronics. I was avionics aboard A4C Skyhawks, fighter bombers, Marine Corps fighter bombers. And I flew those jets. I flew in the trainers. And my dream was to, my father and I started flight lessons at the same time. He soloed, I was about to solo, And then my dad was killed in a mid-air plane collision in Albuquerque, New Mexico, hit from above and behind by a B-57 weather reconnaissance bomber, cut his plane in half. He fell 1,200 feet. He was killed instantly. And I'm glad Dad didn't feel any pain, suffered with cancer or something like that. He was killed at 49 years old doing two things he loved: flying an airplane and looking at property he was going to build on, looking at the geographical lay of the land. So that was the dream, was for me to go to OCS. I'd already passed all my boards, and I was going to do 2 more years of college and then go to OCS in Quantico, Virginia, get my lieutenant, and then make captain, and then go to flight school. That was the plan. And it turned out Dad was killed. So, I was going to be a pilot in the Marine Corps, but I ended up a drummer in a rock band. So I was going to be a brain surgeon, but I ended up being a shepherd. So, no regrets. Everybody says, do you have any regrets? I have one regret, and that is my first wife, that I wasn't faithful to her. I would give anything to be the man still married to his sweetheart and always being faithful. But once you're unfaithful, there's no going back. And we're very good friends. We talk all the time, Patricia. And the only reason that we have the relationship we do is because of the strength of her character. Because I was just another husband that cheated on his wife. And we'd be out on the road for 8-9 months, and I needed to be with a woman, and I finally fell off the wagon. And I was honest with her, and it was very hurtful to her. So that's my one regret, that I wasn't a faithful husband. I'd give anything to be that guy, but I'm not. So, but we're still good friends. But she was the one that I called when I got to the farmhouse in the plane crash.
Wow.
I made it through the swamp and a freshly plowed field, which is hard to walk across when you're not injured. The deep furrows, and I'm trudging across this field. I got to a farmhouse. The guy came out, pointed a gun at me, pulled the trigger. I heard a loud shot. I felt something sting me in my left shoulder. I fell to the ground, and I yelled plane crash with what I thought was my last breath. I just wanted to get help back to the crash site because my friends were bleeding to death. And that's what I did. So, Gary Rossington was interviewed. They trotted him out, his wife and Vector Management, to say something bad about me because I had said that they were a bunch of greedy assholes. And they are. So, Gary was told by his management company, you got to say something bad about Artimus. So Gary comes out knowing that he's lying, because for years Gary was my biggest advocate. Artimus saved our life. Artimus saved our life. So in VH1 to Jake Tapper, Gary says, Artimus ran away from the plane crash because he was scared. Well, you damn right I was scared. My friends are killed before my eyes. My pilot and co-pilot, good friends of mine, killed before my eyes. I found them. They were decapitated. It wasn't a pretty sight. So I was scared, and I wanted to get to help before I died and bring help back to the crash site. And that's exactly what I did. And as far as me running away from the crash site, I told Jake Tapper, I said, I couldn't run. I was, I had injuries. There was no way I could run. I walked. I crawled. I dragged myself along. But, I knew Gary was bleeding bad, everybody. So it was important. And so this music keeps me alive. I just recorded a new album with my son, Christopher Chapel Pyle.
Chapel.
And it's the band Chapel.
Nice.
And we have a great album. It's kind of Afro-Cuban, Native American world beat drum stuff with 5 killer rock songs that are very different that my son wrote when we lived in Jerusalem, Israel, on the castle of King David on Mount Zion. And he wrote one song called Stronger Man that's on our album. And I love it. It takes a stronger man to love than to hate. And I thought that was very strong. And so I play those songs with the same ferocity that I play Skynyrd. And I had another album that I just did called Down Home. It's a country southern rock album, one of the most beautiful that I've ever played on. A guy named Maverick, Gary Trimble, Maverick is his stage name, out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And it's one of the most beautiful albums I've ever played on. There's a song in there about fried chicken, you know. I mean, I never thought I'd be in a song, on an album with fried chicken, but it's a beautiful song about a little kid that asks his grandpa, what are we having for dinner? And grandpa sings a little ditty about fried chicken. And then the kid grows up, he's the grandfather, his grandson comes in, what are we having for dinner? And he sings the little ditty that his grandpa sang. And it's about fried chicken, sitting on the front porch, drinking cold tea, you know, taters and cornbread and all that stuff. It's kind of corny, but it's a beautiful album. And the guy that wrote all the songs, Gary Trimble, he, you know, wrote a song about me. It's called Kentucky Brother, because I was born in Louisville, Kentucky. And I couldn't even play drums on it. I had to write the drum part and have another drummer come in, because it was so emotional to play on a song about me. I didn't feel right playing drums on it. Nothing weird or morbid, but I just brought in another guy. I wrote the part, and this guy played great. So, and then I just dropped another album. William Shatner, Captain Kirk, had me on his Christmas album. And I'm on there with Iggy Pop, Todd Rundgren, Henry Rollins, Joni Mitchell, Judy Collins. And there are a whole bevy of people on Mr. Shatner's Christmas album. I played on Walking in a Winter Wonderland. And I had to cut it 3 times because the engineer goes, Artimus, what's that in the background? You got a great track, but what's that in the background? I said, that's me laughing. And it was picking up on all my 27 microphones on my drums. Because Mr. Shatner, you know, Captain Kirk had sent me the file, and I'm in Asheville, and they said, so what's up? And I said, look, you know, he's going, walking in a winter wonderland, you know, sleigh bells ring, are you, you know, the way he delivers. And I was cracking up. So they brought him down in my mix. 3rd time was a charm. I got a great, you know, I got a great cut. And he sent back in big letters, I love it. And I put sleigh bells on there. I have sleigh bells. I have all kinds of auxiliary percussion, not just drums. And so, you know, I dropped 3 albums a couple months ago, you know, on basically the same day with my son, Chapel, Southern Fried Tribal Boogie. It's really good. And Mr. Shatner, and then Down Home. And APB, we're working on a soundtrack for the movie.
This for the upcoming document or movie on
It's not a documentary.
okay.
It's actually a live action movie about the day before, the day of, and the day after the plane crash. And there's a lot of Skynyrd fans all over the world that are not getting any younger that would like to know what happened that fateful day and that fateful night. And I thought they deserved to hear the story. So I wrote the screenplay by spending 22 hours with the director, Jared Cohen. And then Cleopatra Films is behind it. And Brian Pereira put his whole life on the line to do this movie. And we're my son Chris off of Southern Fried Tribal Boogie, we have a song in the soundtrack called Black Creek. APB, we wrote a song with Warren Haynes. We haven't cut it yet, but we're doing that for the movie. And you know, right after it came out in Rolling Stone that I was doing the film, Judy Van Zant sent 12 blood-sucking weasel attorneys, you know, $1,000 an hour attorneys from New York, and they said horrible things about me. And I opened up my door one day and there was a 3-foot-high stack of FedEx boxes, and it was all lawsuit. And they called me a poo-poo face and a bad guy and all this stuff. What I said to the judge and all the counsel, I said, you know, I'm the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame drummer of Lynyrd Skynyrd, a world-famous band. Why would I make a bad movie about my friends? And I think the Court of Appeals saw my point. and 3 judges ruled unanimously against Judy. And I will always have Judy Van Zandt as a nemesis because she's power hungry and in control. It's all about money and everything and greed. I'm about the music. I was in the band. You know, I'm about the music. So she'll always be trying to come after me and say, you can't do this and you can't use the name and you can't say this. But that's not important to me because it's trivial. But Cleopatra is allowed to go forward with the film. Now the film is finished and I've heard it looks really good. And they're working on special effects, you know, some CGI stuff in there, which is very expensive. And we had a low budget. We only had a budget of maybe $1.4 million to do the film. And as soon as Judy came after us with that lawsuit, Brian Pereira from Cleopatra had to put a $2 million a bond up. They froze all of his assets, and he works with Charlie Daniels and the Outlaws and all kinds of people all over the world, and he has distribution. And so that really crimped his business. And he was saying that he may go back and has every right to sue Judy for her frivolous lawsuit. And I wish them success. I don't want to sue anybody. I don't want to have to work with any lawyers. There are good attorneys in this world. I wanted to be an attorney. I wasn't smart enough. I went to college and I was in pre-law. But, you know, you have to be, somebody's life is in your hands and you have to remember case law and you have to be able to save their lives, you know, and I don't want somebody's life in my hands because I'm an idiot. You know, I'm not a student, so I couldn't remember all the case law and stuff. But I do love to play drums. I can fly an airplane, I can run a bulldozer, and I can play drums. And what I love the most is playing drums, especially this band that I was a part of, Lynyrd Skynyrd. So, you know, shame on Judy, shame on all of them for joining in with Judy and suing me. And when I asked them in the very beginning, I went to their management company, Vector Management. I call them either Sphincter Management or Rectum Management, but their name is Vector. And I went to them and I said, look, I'm doing this movie. Let's get Gary Rossington and Judy to come to the table and let's make a great movie together. And instead, they didn't even tell Judy and Gary that I was, you know, talked to them. And then Judy and Gary come after me with this lawsuit. And I don't think Gary so much was probably pushing it. He's told pretty much what to do by his wife and by Judy he's surrounded by some sinister people. I love Gary Rossington. I miss him. We played for the kings and queens of rock and roll all over this world. And we shared something very special. And I miss Gary and I'd like to see him. Every time he's had a heart attack in the last years, you know, he's had 5. And they push him back on the road after 2 weeks. Any doctor would tell you it takes 6 months to a year, you know, before you go back out after a heart attack. But they're so greedy. Vector and all those people, the people they call Lynyrd Skynyrd, 10 people they hired last week in Nashville. And then Judy and all of them, they're going, come on, Gary, you got to get out there and make us that money. Because he's their cash cow. And that offends me. And it also offends me that they dress the people they hire to be Lynyrd Skynyrd and call them Lynyrd Skynyrd. And they dress them up like my dead friends. That's offensive to me. And so they don't ever want to get within arm's length of me, I guarantee you. And they won't because they hide. Every time I'm around, I go to the funerals. You know, they all keep their distance. And I did see Gary at Billy Powell's funeral. There's only Gary and I left.
You know, Artimus, I just want to say this. I hope that, you know, honestly, from my heart, that you and Gary Rossington can get back together just as people, because we're people before this and we're people afterwards, and everything in between in the rock and roll business, you know, and the media and all that. I mean, it comes down to the people that were there. You were there with him in the plane crash. You were there in the success of Lynyrd Skynyrd. And, you know, you guys created together. You guys had a baby called Lynyrd Skynyrd. I mean, you guys were in the band together, and of course the products that came out and the touring. And all
I came later and everything, but, you know, Gary had this band together, and then I came in. So Gary's time in Lynyrd Skynyrd is what, 44 years. My time in Lynyrd Skynyrd is what, 42 years, and he's like 45 years. At this point, what is the difference? You know, whether he was there first or not. And I would never call my band Lynyrd Skynyrd. Nobody in my band. And it's our band because we all work together. I couldn't do this without the guys. They do so much stuff keeping it together. We don't have a road manager, but everybody in the band is a road manager. They all pick up the slack, and they make it pretty easy on me. All I got to do is go out and play drums. We just bought a tour bus. Our keyboard player, Brad Durden, who worked with Tom Dowd, you know, and the great producer. Tom was a good friend of mine. He started Atlantic Records with Mr. Erdogan, Ahmet Erdogan, who was at our Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, and then Mr. Erdogan passed away that next year. So we were so proud to have him at the 21st induction of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The man that was behind the whole thing, he was at ours, and that's a big deal. And it was the royalty of rock and roll. Black Sabbath, Blondie, the Sex Pistols, us, Lynyrd Skynyrd, and Miles Davis. What a class. And Sting was there, Metallica, the guys from Queen. Everybody was there because, not necessarily because of us, but because of Black Sabbath and Miles Davis. We had a cross-section of people. So, but you're right, man. I miss Gary very much. And every time he's had a heart attack, I try to call Vector and say, would you please tell Gary that I love him and I'm thinking about him, and get well soon. You know, your weather here in LA last week was cold and rainy, and I'd get hot and steamy playing drums, and I'd go outside, so I have a bit of a head cold. I apologize, but I am not contagious.
And you know, it's just a pleasure to speak with you, and you know, such a candid person, such an honest, you know, straightforward person. I mean, you know, I can only dream of being in a band with people that are all like you, because, you know, honesty's tough, you know, like you said about your son's song.
Maybe I'm a little too straightforward sometimes. And the thing with Judy and the movie and all that stuff, I don't hate Judy. I love Judy. And I'm not really bitter about what they did.
You guys have history together.
And we have a history. I thought in our new documentary on Showtime that was done by CMT, Brian Phillips and all them, I thought Judy did really well in the movie. I thought Gary did great. I thought Ed did great. They were funny. Ed was very funny. And Ed did something. He sent us a 4-minute video of him playing guitar. So in the documentary, Ed was full-faced and healthy as he could be. And then when he sent us this video of him playing guitar, he was frail. His face was gaunt. His hands were frail. But he still could play that guitar. And it was the classiest thing that I have ever seen somebody do. Ed King said goodbye by sending a 4-minute film of him playing guitar and saying, I may be dying, brothers, but I can still play my guitar. And it...
Wow.
It was beautiful. It really was. To see Ed. But he was 68 years old. And... you know, I don't know, without Ed and Bob Burns, you know, I don't know what the path of Lynyrd Skynyrd would have been without Bob's incredible contribution, and without Ed writing Sweet Home Alabama. I think Ronnie would have handled it. Ronnie would have made sure that something happened. He would have made it happen. But Ed and Bob Burns really, you know, greased the skids for the band to get to where they were. And especially Ed. And they just sold his guitar. I think it's up for sale. It may have already sold the one that he wrote Sweet Home Alabama on. $450,000. And I'm sure his wife is very happy about that, and I'm sure that somebody's happy to have that, because that's a Stratocaster.
Nobody else wrote Sweet Home Alabama on a different guitar, so that's the only one.
Nope, that's the only one.
Awesome. So tell me about Ronnie Van Zant. When you were working with Ronnie, in the process of the songs, I know that Steve Gaines, you know, I mean, before the plane crash and everything, I mean, there was just this this chemistry within the band, and you
It
guys had
was.
3 guitar players, right? You
Well,
guys,
in the movie, Alan Collins says that he told Ronnie and Gary that when they met Steve and heard him play, Alan said, "He's the one. He's the one," because we had lost Ed, and we auditioned we auditioned Leslie West, but how could that be billed? Leslie West with Lynyrd Skynyrd, Lynyrd Skynyrd featuring Leslie West. That never would have worked. But we actually went to his apartment with Ronnie and Gary and I one night and talked to him about it. And then
was that in New York?
That was in New York, and he puts the key in his front door. Leslie does, and opens up his townhouse, and it automatically clicks in a jukebox at the end of the entry foyer, and goes into Mississippi Queen. Oh no! Right when he opens the door, it was
Crazy.
hilarious. We even auditioned a black guy that played guitar for Minnie Riperton, and Ronnie loved the guy, but along came Steve, and Alan said, "He's the one." Steve and Cassie, 2 better people have never been born.
Think of song lyrics from Lynyrd Skynyrd, and I'm thinking of Boise, Idaho. I'm thinking about what's your name, and
What's your name?
like it sounds like some of these songs were written on the road, and I
They were,
being part
and
of
they're
street
true
survivors.
stories. What's Your Name is a true story. That happened, but it didn't happen in Boise, Idaho. It happened in Norfolk, Virginia, and we played a place called the Scope, and at the hotel, Ronnie kind of got pushed out of the bar area into the lobby area, and you have to have a seat to be able to have a drink. And Ronnie was standing up, and he actually got charged with standing up while drinking. And that's when he wrote "What's Your Name?" We can't drink in the bar. What a shame! Won't you come upstairs, little girl, and have a drink of champagne?
Wow.
So Ronnie wrote about stuff that happened. Saturday Night Specials about too many guns out there that people guns that'll blow up in your hand. Saturday Night Specials, they're not the best weapon to have, and so a lot of that stuff was written on the road. Of course, their first 2 albums were stuff that they had been working on for years, and that's always your easiest albums if you're up there. So Nothing Fancy is when I came along, and it was hard. A Saturday Night Special was easy because it went on a Burt Reynolds movie, and that was a powerful song. But finishing the rest of the album was hard work, and it was my first time. I just thought that's the way it always is done. We were a rock band. And this band rocks like no other band in the world because they play the music, like I said, with accuracy and respect and honor and integrity. And we don't do it for money. It's not all about greed and grabbing every buck you can and selling the fans a bunch of crappy t-shirts. Our t-shirts, our merchandising is small, and it's very cool stuff. The band that Gary goes out with, they sell these very tasteless t-shirts that nobody will ever wear. Like I said, I'm not bitter about the direction things took. I'm disappointed. I love music, but I hate the music business. It is such a ruthless situation. I'm very content on going out and playing our set and staying out of all the drama, But we all have drama in our lives.
I have the opportunity to speak with you today and see your band, and really, glad that you're out there doing what you do. And
I like that hat.
Jimmy K here, Metal Voice. Look at this. The Metal Voice shirts are now on sale. Just go to the video description to find out on how you can purchase one. Metal